Okay, good afternoon and welcome to our first OSEEL Guides meeting of the 25-26 school year. We are so incredibly excited that you're with us, and we hope that as we move forward through this journey together over the next several months, you find the support and the guidance that you need as you are entering your role as a new director of special education or preschool coordinator. Um, we do want to take a moment to just kind of acclimate you to OSEEL, the Office of Special Education and Early Learning, and the vision that we have for the next several months. And my name's Alicia Reeves, and I'll tell you a little bit more about me in just a minute. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Tracy Sharp, Strategic Advisor for the Office of Special Education and Early Learning.
Thank you, Alicia, and welcome everyone. Just real quick, we have been out on a beginning of the year road show, I guess we'll just have to call it, because we're going through all the regions. So, how many of you on today's meeting have already been a part of those meetings? If you would just you can drop it in the chat. You can actually use a reaction button and just give a thumbs up. Just kind of get an idea of how many of you have been a part of those already. Okay. All right. Okay, good. If you're like me, you're looking for the react button, and then you're finding the thumbs up, and you're kind of navigating through that. And so there's a lot of different ways to do things on Teams, and it's exciting, but it depends on which platform you're used to using. So you'll get used to it, and you'll get acclimated to that. But I just want to say, on behalf of Dr. Greta Hilton, our Associate Commissioner in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning, welcome to OSEEL Guides. And I know Dr. Hilton wishes she could be with you all and is unable to be here today, but I do want to share a welcome from her and kind of talk just a little bit about the vision she had for OSEEL and how that got started. So if you've already heard this, then I'll simply apologize, and then I'll tell you, if you hear it today, you're going to hear it again soon, in the next couple of weeks. So we have been really fortunate to go out across parts of the state already. We have been to 4 different regions, which actually covers 5 regions, and then we have 4 more coming up. And so we look forward, if we haven't seen and met you already, we look forward to doing so. And so one of the things that Dr. Hilton talks about when she goes over this important information is really just talking about how OSEEL birthed and how it got elevated to an office. So back in the day, back when I was parts of the time when I was a director, the special education lived in a branch. I think it might have been a division, and then there were some branches. I don't know all the details about that, but what I do know is now it's been elevated to its own office, which is good news for you. It's good news for me, and it's good news for kids ultimately across the Commonwealth, because their presence is more known, there is more of a voice, and there's more attention that is paid to and directed to those students. And also living in the department or in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning, we have, of course, our early learning, we have our preschool programs, we have 504s, gifted and talented. No, we do not have 504s. Please do not let me confuse you all today. I was trying to think about ESS. So we have ESS, we have gifted and talented. We do not do 504s. That is regular education. All right. So moving right along. My apologies for that. But just a little bit about the vision that began really when OSEEL was birthed in 2018. And so I'm sure improving outcomes was part of that, prior to that. But specifically as it was elevated in 2018 and made into its own office, and really focusing on those educational outcomes for diverse students and early learners through effective support, technical assistance, training, coaching, and guidance. And you're going to get to see how all of that works together as you participate in OSEEL Guides.
You need next slide.
Yeah, I guess I need to say next slide. I'm sorry.
Yes.
My apologies. So looking at the North Star priorities that came about several years ago as everyone worked together, you can see those on your screen. It's really looking at focusing on the foundation of compliance, ensuring access and opportunity, and improving outcomes and results, which really aligns to that mission that we just shared. You'll see that there are 8 prongs to our North Star, and all of them are represented in the work that we do each day across the office and with our technical assistance providers. So you're all part of surtax, who also focus on these North Star priorities, who are funded by OSEEL and RTCs as well. So you're a part of those RTCs and those um, as early learning leaders. And so really know that we'll be honing in and focusing on those as we go along. And I'm going to give a quick plug to when you see news you can use. Be sure you're submitting spotlights for your area. So, although you be new, you be mighty, right? So, you're just getting started, but there's a lot of great work that you're already doing in the short amount of time that you've been serving in your tenure. So, share with us the great things that you're doing in those areas, and let's share that with your colleagues as well. Next slide. So going back and kind of talking just a little bit about how it was birthed and the structure, if you'll see here, Dr. Greta Hilton is our Associate Commissioner and our State Director of Special Education. So she served those dual roles. And at the office level, we have our IDEA policy, we have data, and we have physical components. And you'll learn more about that as you go through OSEEL guides and as you participate in a variety of trainings that we do. And you can see here that we're divided into 5 different divisions or units. We have 3 divisions, 2 units, and really they all function the same as far as a division is concerned. You just have to have legislative action to be able to create new divisions. So that is all, created with that mindset. And so, with that being said, that's kind of an overview. Just want to say welcome. Thank you for being here. You have such an important role that will make a difference in the lives of students and families across the Commonwealth, and we appreciate you. And speaking of appreciation, I'm also going to give a quick appreciation to Veronica Sullivan and Amanda Waldrop with our Division of IDEA Implementation and Preschool. They take care of and provide a lot of guidance and technical assistance. And so I want to share a thank you to them for working very, very closely with Alicia Reeves and our friends at TACE who have been putting this work together. So thank you all for leading, guide, and directing this work, and we appreciate it. Look forward to working with everybody.
Thank you, Tracy. I do want to take a minute to see if our friends who have participated in this workshop series, if you're joining us for year 2 for you, could you put like a thumbs up in the chat? We're really going to practice using all of our little extra reaction features and chat features over the next few months. So if you could put a thumbs up in the chat so I can kind of get a gauge for who's been here before and who's brand spanking new. Okay, hi Tanya, welcome back. Hey, Crystal, Holly, Savannah. All right. Great. I see several of you are back for year 2. So as we get going, I want to tell those of you who are back for year 2, hold on to your seats because this year is going to be new and exciting and really engaging. So I want to start off just talking about OSEEL guides, right? So what are our characteristics of a guide? So everybody, when you think about, if you think about a tour you've been on, or maybe even a mentor you've had, or any time in life where you've had a guide, what are some characteristics of a guide for you? What are some good characteristics that you would see? Take just a minute and put your answers in the chat. Okay, I see clear communication, good communicator, clear expectations, steps are to be taken in order. Some great responses. Give you just a minute to think. They're knowledgeable. Leader, communicator, organized. Okay. Compliant with laws and regulations. These are all great responses. And I hope you see that as we go through this year, that this workshop series is going to be a guide for you as a new director of special education or as a new preschool coordinator. Dr. Sharp, I see you have your hand up. You don't mean to have your hand up? Okay, okay. So we want to guide you in your role and where you're going throughout this year. And as we get started, I do want to set some meeting norms for us. I want us to, if at all possible, have your cameras on. That's going to be important, especially when we go into breakout rooms. We're going to have opportunities to talk to one another and learn from each other. And that's only going to work if you participate in those sessions and have your cameras on. You're here, so hopefully you logged in through your work computer, because we're going to have lots of opportunities for you to engage and participate. And using an actual computer is going to make that a little bit easier for you. And again, if you ever have a thought or a question, feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat, and we will visit that question or that thought as soon as we can in the natural flow of events. Okay, thank you, Brinley. Next slide, please. So who are your guides on this journey? Our first guide is the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. Over the course of the next several months, you are going to get to meet the people who are answering the phones when you call with a question, the leaders that are leading our state in special education and early learning. Those are going to be your people as you grow in your role, that you want to know their names, you want to know who they are, and you want to know those are the people who you're calling. That was a really important part of the vision for this workshop series. As someone who used to be a director of special education and early learning, my partners at OSEEL were the difference in maybe staying away from complaints or in being compliant, knowing how to do something. Those partners were my right hand in my daily work in my job. Our next partner is the Technical Assistance for Excellence in Special Education Center, and I'd like to turn it over to Brenda Smith with TASTE to share a little bit about their role in this partnership.
Thanks, Alicia. Yeah, I'm Brenda Smith. I'm an associate director with the Center for Technical Assistance for Excellence in Special Education, or TASE. We are based at Utah State University, and we've been providing support for state departments of special education and school districts since the 1980s around implementing the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So we are here to support. Today you get to hear from me a little bit during the presentation, but as we go throughout the school year, either myself or some of our other staff members, just based on their specialty, will be joining the folks from OSEEL to, help you understand your role under IDEA, the district. So thanks, Alicia.
And like I said earlier, my name's Alicia Reeves. I work with the University of Kentucky Human Development Institute. I am a former preschool coordinator, former director of special education, and I also formerly worked for the Kentucky Department of Education in OSEEL with our team there. And so I am your facilitator for these meetings. You all should have email contact for me, and I encourage you, reach out. before you struggle with something, please reach out and we can get you connected to the right people to support you. Okay, next slide. So what is our purpose? What is the purpose of OSEEL Guides? Again, we have our team of guides. We have state level and national level support for you. Our goal is to provide you with the resources and to maximize your potential, provide support to you, and increase your leadership capacity. I know you answered a question when you were registering, and many of you were in the classrooms in May and have now stepped into a leadership role in a district level. And you're probably learning really quickly that that feels a little bit different than being in the classroom. So we want to make sure that no matter where you were in May, as you're stepping into this new role, we're supporting you. And at the end of the day, the reason why we do what we do, the reason why we've all stepped into these roles is because we want to support the growth of our students. We want to support their families, and we want to make a difference in their educational experience. And I know in the roles you're sitting in, some of you were in preschool meetings this morning and high school transition meetings right before lunch. And that's how your day can go. You are really working to support all students at all times, and we want to walk alongside you in that endeavor. Next slide, please. So our content for the year, and don't worry about writing all of this down. I will share something in a follow-up email that kind of has our calendar for the year, but these are some things that we're going to cover. Today we're going to talk to you about an introduction to the state performance plan and the annual performance report. We're going to work on becoming that instructional leader, having that voice within your district as an instructional leader. MTSS, referrals, evaluation, high leverage practices, really helping you find those high leverage practices that support your teachers, supporting your students, understanding accommodations, data informed decision making through lots of different avenues. One of the things that from previous years, we recognize fiscal responsibilities and budgeting. That could be something that's very new to many of you. Discipline practices, effective communications, how to host meaningful ARC meetings in transition from preschool to post-secondary. So those are just a few of the things that we're going to cover. If you were with us last year, you'll know we maybe covered more than that. But we've kind of fine-tuned it a little bit this year and working through a leadership lens and supporting you that way. Next slide, please. One thing that I am very excited to say that we are going to be able to do, in addition to our online monthly workshops, we have secured an opportunity to meet in person at the 2025 Kentucky Exceptional Children's Conference in Louisville. Our meeting time is set up for November 23rd. That is the Sunday afternoon that the conference starts at 4:15. Those are our times now. Those could possibly change, but that's what they've told us for now. But we do have a space. Amanda Waldrop and I will be there. We'll have some opportunities to just kind of meet and greet. In addition, some opportunities kind of expand our learning. So we hope that all of you will be able to register and join us at the CEC conference this year. I'm really excited. We've been working a couple of years to get this added to this group, and really excited that we have this space to have an in-person meeting. So next slide, please. Okay. So what I'd like you to do, Brinley is going to put up a poll, and I'd like to, we've said Brinley a lot. Brinley Jones is with TACE, and she is working behind the scenes to make sure that these meetings run smoothly. And we could not do what we're doing without her support. So I really want to thank Brinley publicly for all the work that she's doing. So Brinley's put up a poll on our slide, and I want you to add a word or two kind of representing how you feel about this year in your new role and where we're going. So we'll take just a minute to give you to add those words. You should be able to type. Brinley, I'm not seeing all the responses. If you want to share out some of the things that they're sharing.
Yeah, of course. People are listing excited, encouraged and nervous, overwhelmed but excited, determined, inspired but exhausted, new things, overwhelmed, motivated. And when I close it in just a moment, hopefully you'll be able to see all of them in the chat once it's closed.
Great. Thank you so much. And I think those are all very real emotions. They're very real feelings. And I can tell you, as someone who started in your role year after year, I kind of had those feelings every year, getting started with a new year and looking to what was ahead. But again, our goal is to help with that overwhelmed feeling, to give you the support and guidance that you need to be able to do your job and do your job well. So again, we're very excited to get started. Next slide. Okay, again, this is my contact information, and please feel free to reach out to me at any time via email. And if I can't answer your question, I will help get you connected to someone who can do that for you. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Waldrop with OSEEL for the next part of our session.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda Waldrop. I'm the Assistant Director of the Division of IDEA Implementation in Preschool. So I'm going to help get us started on our journey today, along with, I'm going to turn it over to Amy Patterson real quick to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Amy Patterson. I am the Data Manager for Special Education at K2E.
All right, and then we also have Andrea Bartholomew.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Andrea Bartholomew. I'm the branch manager for school readiness, which is early childhood, as well as the 619 state coordinator, which is preschool special education.
All right, thank you. And then we also have Lauren, if you want to introduce yourself real quick as well.
Hi, I'm Lauren Thiedemann. I am the State Performance Plan Annual Performance Report Specialist. I work in the Division of IDA Monitoring and Results.
All right, and then you also heard from Brenda earlier as well. She's also going to be joining us today throughout the journey as well. So again, thank you all for participating today. All right, next slide, please. All right, so today we're going to be diving into the State Performance Plan and Annual Performance Report, or the SPPAPR for short, the SPPAPR indicators, and we're going to explore how they impact educational outcomes for students with disabilities. And so we'll be using the map to student success that you see there on our slide here as our guide, and you'll notice that the indicators are grouped into different locations on the map. And so this structure is intentional. It's going to help us to make the 18 indicators more manageable by organizing them based on shared characteristics. So for example, you see achievement archway on the map. It includes indicators 3, 7, and 17, all of which relate to student achievement, which we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go throughout the course of the presentation today. So throughout today's session, we'll visit each location to explore the indicators in context and deepen our understanding. So to kick things off, we're going to find out which indicators you're already familiar with. And so here's how this is going to work. In just a moment, Brinley is, as Alicia said, she's like our extraordinaire today with the technology. She's going to open up the whiteboard feature in Teams. And so on the whiteboard, you'll see an image of the map to student success along with a question about the SPPAPR indicators, and you'll use the star emoji to mark the spot on the map where you think the answer belongs. And so everyone will have access to the map and can place their star individually. And so if you're not sure where to place the star, like if you're not sure where that particular item relates to, just do the best that you can. This is really just going to help us to get an idea of which indicators you may already be familiar with and others that we may need to dive into a little bit more deeply throughout the presentation. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Brindley real quick, who's going to open the whiteboard and who's going to help kind of give us some directions on how to access the emojis.
Thank you. So let me just pull up this first map. But as she mentioned, you're going to put a star emoji on the map. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll have a little toolbar that showed up. And if you click on the heart icon that's in the center of that toolbar, that is the add reactions icon, and open that up, then you will be able to see the star icon. And you can click on the star icon and hover over the map wherever you would like to place it and click. And please note that it may take a few seconds to load depending on your internet. And if you have any issues with the whiteboard not showing up, after a few seconds, please put in the chat. We can see if we can resolve your issues. But it looks like a few people are starting to add stars in.
Perfect. So yeah, the first question that you all are going to do is which site would you visit on the map to learn about student assessment? So just take a moment to fill that out. All right, so is everybody, it looks like we're seeing Achievement Archway is becoming a popular location. All right, so great. So if you selected Achievement Archway, you are correct. All right, so now let's pull up the next item. So thank you all for doing that. All right, so now you can see which site would you visit to learn more about students in high school or life after high school. So again, just use the little star icon to select which place on the map do you think you're going to visit for that. Oh, I see lots of people there. Let's go into Pathfinder Pass. So the question was, where is this icon? If you click, there's a heart where it says add reaction. You can click the heart, and when you click the heart, that'll give you the option to find the star icon on there. And if for some reason you can't find the star and you want to select a different one, that's okay too. The star, we figured, just kind of fits more with the nature theme, but you're welcome to select whichever one if you like. All right, so we appreciate you all. It looks like Pathfinder Pass is kind of the overwhelming majority. So if you selected that one, great job, you are correct. So then we're going to do our last one here in just a moment. So on this one, you're going to pick which site on the map would you visit to learn about initial evaluation requirements? Which location on the map do you think is going to help you with that one? All right. Okay. All right, great. So it looks like a lot of folks are selecting the Timely Trails location on the map. So very good. So great job. We appreciate you all participating in that. All right, so now we're going to take a look so next slide, please. So we appreciate you all taking a few minutes just to plot those different locations. That just kind of gives us an idea of how familiar you are with some of the indicators up to this point. So now just a couple of logistical things to think through. So we've got a handout. You should have received a handout from Alicia. She sent this information out. There should be 2 copies of it. One, you have a printable version where you could print it off. If you're one of those types that likes to, handwrite notes, that would probably be more myself. I like to handwrite notes. You're welcome to use the printable version to be able to do that. Or there is a fillable version that you can use where you can just type directly into the notes. So whichever one works best for you, feel free to use either one. And so on the front page of the handout that you received from Alicia, you're going to find 2 QR codes. And you can see one of those indicated by the arrow on the screen. It's in the welcome sign there. And then there's also one there in the suitcase as well. So the QR code inside the welcome sign links to the SPPAPR reference card. And so this is a key resource that will be referenced throughout the presentation. So you're welcome to, use your phone to scan the QR code if you like, or if you want to just click the link in the welcome sign, you can also just have it as a tab on your computer, whichever works best. And then the second QR code that's in the suitcase, that you can use to go to the SPPAPR indicator guide. And so that just kind of gives a more in-depth look at the SPPAPR indicators. So if you want to have that handy as well, you're welcome to use that resource too, because we will be kind of talking through, the indicators as you go. And so those 2 resources might be helpful to reference throughout the session. And so as you heard me say previously on the slide, as we explore the map, you're going to notice that the indicators are grouped by location. And so again, these groupings are intentional and designed to support understanding around them, given the number of indicators involved, because there's 18, which is quite a few. And so we wanted to try to group it into more manageable amounts of information to share with you all today. And so you can use the map on your handout to take notes on each group of indicators. And so there's going to be welcome signs throughout the presentation as we visit new stops along the journey. You can use those welcome signs to write down some key phrases about each of those group of indicators, or you're welcome to create your own kind of words that you need to, just kind of help you reference those indicators. But that's what those welcome signs are for throughout the presentation. You'll be able to see those just to help with the phrasings around those. There's also space on the handout to jot down additional key learnings. Some sections include fill in the blank prompts that's going to be addressed during the presentation today. And we're going to be revisiting those items at the end. So you just want to be sure that you capture particularly the fill in the blank items that are on your handout, because we may be using those for an interactive activity towards the end of the session today. So you definitely want to be sure to capture that information. And then finally, on the last page of your handout, you'll find an action step section there indicated by little Post-it notes. And this is a place to note any follow-up steps, communication resources that we'll talk about today, and any additional materials that we won't have time to get to. You'll see those additional resources there. You'll have that you can use and reference after today's session to maybe dive into the SPPAPR a little bit deeper. All right, so next slide, please. So now I'm going to kick it over to Brenda, who's going to give us an overview of the State Performance Plan and Annual Performance Report.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Amanda. So if you reference that indicator notes guide, we're going to be answering the first question was the SPPAPR on the next couple of slides. So based on the beginning activity, it looks like many of you are already pretty familiar with some of the indicators on the APR. But to set the background, under IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, every state and territory is required to launch and maintain a state performance plan, the SPP. And that is basically a strategic map for the state that will help improve outcomes for children with disabilities. So every state must update their SPP at least every 6 years. So it's a 6-year plan. And the SPP combined with the APR, which I'll talk a little bit more about on the next slide, is designed to measure how well IDEA is being implemented by the states. And federal special education law, including IDEA, was enacted to ensure children with disabilities have equal opportunities for success, and they are receiving the services they need to have successful outcomes. So that's what we're looking at and planning for with your SPP. And so just think of it as the map to ensuring that students have positive outcomes after they've left the school system. And so the SPP sets that map, that course for kids with disabilities by describing how each state implements their requirements under IDEA, evaluating the progress across special education in the state, and setting annual targets for the 18 indicators, which are a mix of outcomes and compliance checkpoints. So if you look at the SPP, it has targets set for the next 6 years. This is, if you look at indicator 1 for graduation, there will be, okay, by this year, this is what we want our graduation rate to be. So it's kind of measuring how we're going to make those improvements. Next slide, please, Brinley. Okay, perfect. There goes our car. We're going down the path. So vroom, there's my sound effect to go with it. So we're following the SPP. We're measuring our progress on the map. And how we measure progress on the SPP is through the annual performance report, the APR. And as you can probably guess from the name, it's annual. So every year, every state compiles an APR report, and it shows their progress towards the targets they set in their SPP. And that way it routes data back to the Federal Office of Special Education Programs to show how each state is advancing and progressing student outcomes in special education. So if the SPP is the map, the APR is measuring your state's progress along the map. And so while, the SPP is updated every 6 years, it's an ongoing process. And that's what the APR shows. It is a snapshot of what is going on in the state. And you can see how different programs that are enacted are affecting results and outcomes for kids with disabilities and different things. For example, when COVID hit, a lot of states immediately saw graduation rates for students with disabilities drop. So you can kind of see how different things are affecting outcomes. And so under IDEA, each state is responsible for what's called general supervision. So supervising how IDEA is implemented. And the SPP and APR is one piece of those general supervision requirements. And as we go throughout the year with guides, you'll learn a little bit more about the other pieces. And sometimes it can seem a little bit time intensive to gather all this data as a district and then send it to the state for them to gather and compile and submit for the APR. But I just want to send out the reminder that before the 1970s, when we got our first federal special education law, a lot of kids with disabilities weren't in the classroom. In fact, only 1 in 5 students with disabilities were being educated before federal law. And so while it might seem like a lot of time to gather this data and to report on it, that is a reflection of that previous discrimination against students with disabilities and making sure that they're receiving the services that they need in schools to be successful. And let's move on to the next slide. I believe I'm turning over to Lauren.
Yes. So you've heard us talking about this map to student success, and you've heard Brenda and Amanda mention there are 18 indicators that kind of guide a student to that summit of the mountain where we want them to go. So those indicators are grouped into 2 categories. We either call them compliance indicators or results indicators. And I get into more on the next slide, please, Brinley. So we've been sitting for a minute, listening for a minute. So we're going to do a quick just opportunity for movement activity with the compliance and results indicators. I'm going to name an indicator. And if you believe the indicator is a compliance indicator, you're going to stay seated. And then if you believe the indicator is a results indicator, you're going to stand up. Again, I know sit, stands, like Some of you may not be into that, but the reason we're having you stand is because research has shown that standing, walking, stepping, all of that shows that participants have a better reasoning and maintain concentration compared to if they're just sitting and getting. So please indulge me. We're going to look first at indicator 1 is graduation rate. So if you believe that's a compliance indicator, stay seated. And if you believe it's a results indicator, you're going to stand up. I'll give you just a quick minute to pop up if you need to. So if you stood, you were correct. Indicator 1 is a results indicator. How about indicator 9? Indicator 9 looks at disproportionate representation. You believe it's compliance, sit, and results, stand. If you stayed seated, you would be correct. It is a compliance indicator. Indicator 14, post-school outcomes. Sit for compliance and stand for results. So if you stood, you would be correct. It's a results indicator. 2 more. Indicator 12, early childhood transition. You believe it's a compliance indicator, stay seated. And if you believe it's a results indicator, stand up. If you stayed seated, you would be correct. It is a compliance indicator. And then last one, indicator 3 looks at assessment. Sit for compliance and stand for results. If you stood up, you would be correct. It is a results indicator. If you had at least 4 out of 5 of those correct, you could just give us a thumbs up with the reaction feature or put something in the chat just to let us know how you did. Great, I see lots of thumbs ups. Again, thank you for indulging me in the standing for those of you that you were able to do that. Hopefully just got your brain working a little bit better, or at least maybe your back feels better or you stood up for a minute if you've been sitting all day like me. If you can go to the next slide, please, Brindley. All right, so the compliance indicators, they're listed and you can see in those 2 boxes on your slides. The ones on the left-hand side, those are set at 0%. And compliance indicator targets are set by the Office of Special Education Programs. So they tell us that we have to be at 0%. So indicator 4B, indicator 9, and indicator 10. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see those targets, again, are set at 100%, but they are set by OSEP. Indicators 11, 12, 13, and 18. Next slide, please. And then on this slide, you're going to see the results indicators pop up here on the map. Results indicators help us understand more about students with disabilities and how they're progressing in key areas of education and life. Each one represents a critical checkpoint on the student's journey through education. And unlike compliance indicators in which those targets are already set for us by OSEP, we have some leeway in these targets. So states set targets with input from our stakeholders on the results indicators. And if you need some help remembering, you can record those indicator numbers on your guided notes that Amanda showed you at the beginning. All right, next slide, please. All right, I think Andrea is going to start us off moving through the map at Waypoint Harbor.
All right, can you all hear me okay? Thumbs up, yeah? Okay, cool. I want to make sure that my voice was okay. I've had a little bit of a cold, so my voice is a little bit of a quitter. I apologize for that. So we are going to talk a little bit about what we'll find at Waypoint Harbor. Next slide, Brindley. So Waypoint Harbor is our least restrictive environments, our LREs, where our kids learn and grow within our classrooms. Indicator 5 is educational environments. This is for children with IEPs who are aged 5 and who are enrolled in kindergarten. That's an important thing to remember. They have to be age 5 by December 1 and enrolled in kindergarten through ages 6 through 21. long time ago, we lumped in those 5-year-olds in kindergarten with our preschool students. We don't do that anymore. They're 5 in kindergarten and then 6 through 21. We look at where they spend the majority of their time. Do they spend it inside the regular class 80% or more? They send it inside the regular class less than 40%? Or are they in a separate school, a residential facility, homebound, or hospital placements? Indicator 5 is a little bit more cut and dry. The indicator 6, coming up to that in just a second, with preschool environments. So that's something that is found on the IEP, of course, and that's something that is an ARC decision where that child should spend the majority of their day. Indicator 6 is a little bit more tricky. And this is our preschool environment. So this is for our kiddos who have an IEP, or ages 3 and 4, and some 5-year-olds who are enrolled in preschool, because you can turn 5 between August 1st and December 1. I mean, remember that. So those students are in this indicator. This is where you have to consider not just where the child spends their day, but the whole program of the early childhood program. Kentucky is an inclusive early childhood program, so the vast majority of our preschools serve all of our students together. So we have that piece where our kids are in those inclusive environments, which is what the preschool indicator 6 is about. We have 3 different categories: receiving the majority of our special education and related services in the regular early childhood program. And in the classroom, that means they're not pulled out for speech and pulled out for OT and pulled out for PT. That means that all of that happens within the regular early childhood classroom. Do they attend a separate special education class, separate school or residential facility? We do have some kids in preschool that do attend residential facilities. We have receiving special education and related services in the home. This one is very, very, very low. Those would be students who are typically medically fragile, have severe needs, something that precludes them from being included in the preschool environment. We very, very few of those kiddos. You do not receive preschool funding for those. You would only receive your IDA funds for those. Indicator 6 also, when we're looking at where they're at, are they in the special education room, in the regular education classroom, is how often are they spending those times of days with typical age peers. They also look at that for indicator 5, but for indicator 6, we measure that a little bit differently. The whole program has to be a regular early childhood program to have your children put into these certain categories where they are receiving the majority of their services in that regular classroom. It can be really complicated. I understand that. And that's fine. We have some flow charts. We have some information on our website, so be sure to check that out. Next slide, please. All right, we're moving on, I think, to the achievement archway.
All right. Yep. Andrea is right. So we are moving on to achievement archway, which includes indicators 3, 7, and 17. So as we move through our SPP-APR map, this stop focuses on assessment, so specifically how students with disabilities are performing academically. Indicator 3 gives us a snapshot of student progress and outcomes based on statewide testing. And so indicator 3's got a lot of information with it, so I'll try to go slow to kind of lead you through each part of it. But indicator 3 reports on student performance in reading and math, and it's divided into 4 parts. So you've got 3A, which is participation. That's kind of the simplest way to think about it. It's participation in the statewide assessment. You've got 3B, which is proficiency rates for students with IEPs taking the regular assessment. And then you have 3C, which is proficiency rates for students with IEPs taking the alternate assessment. And then 3D is the gap in proficiency rates between students with IEPs taking the regular assessment and all students. So 4 parts there. There's quite a bit to kind of keep straight there, but you got 3A participation, 3B students with IEPs taking the regular assessment, 3C students with IEPs taking the alternate assessment, and 3D is that that proficiency, the gap in proficiency between students with disabilities taking the regular assessment and all students. And so these measures help us to understand whether students with disabilities are receiving the support they need to meet grade level expectations. Strong performance here is linked to better long-term outcomes like graduation and post-secondary success. So this really is a very important set of indicators. And so the data for this indicator, comes from Kentucky Summative Assessment, or KSA. And so while directors of special education and preschool coordinators don't submit this data directly, your leadership can really influence the outcomes. And so next month's session is going to introduce some tools and resources to support high quality instruction. And you heard Alicia talk about earlier about instructional leadership as well. And so your role in supporting teachers and promoting the use of evidence-based practices and using data to guide decisions is key to improving student achievement. And then also on the slide, you'll notice that indicator 17 is grouped with indicator 3. And so that's because states choose a focus area based on data and stakeholder input through a data and infrastructure analysis. And so in Kentucky, through this process with our stakeholders, we chose 8th grade math as our focus. So we are aiming to improve outcomes for students with disabilities in mathematics by supporting teachers with evidence-based practices. And we're doing this both in elementary and middle school. And that's really because, math is cumulative, and we are providing support as early as we possibly can to help us accomplish our goal of improving outcomes by 8th grade. And so we use indicator 3B, which are proficiency rates for students with disabilities taking the regular assessment. We use that to measure indicator 17. So we specifically use 8th grade math as our target for that. So it's 3B, 8th grade math, to measure indicator 17. And that may be a quick little hint for your handout that you have there, and maybe something you'll be referencing throughout the rest of the presentation today as we have a closing activity today. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, who's going to talk a little bit about indicator 7.
Thanks, Amanda. So indicator 7, everything that Amanda said about assessment also rings true for preschool outcomes. We know that the better our kids do in the classroom, the more successful they will be in their futures. And that starts for us at 3 years old. We know that a kiddo's brain changes so much between the ages of 3 and 5 that we want to see that data come forward, how they're working in the classroom. So preschool outcomes is a results indicator. Preschool children, again, ages 3 to 5, these are students with an IEP. As I said earlier, Kentucky is an inclusive program, so you'll have students in the classroom with an IEP and without. We require in the preschool program side of things that all students have a continuous assessment and are use the preschool child or the child outcome summary system to rate their preschool outcomes, but only those with IEPs or with disability are the ones that are reported in the SUP APR. These look at 3 different areas that kind of cover the whole spectrum of early childhood. You got your positive, social, emotional skills, the acquisition and use of knowledge and skills, and the use of appropriate behaviors to meet their needs. That's a different than behavior. That would be adaptive skills. So that's what we kind of look at with the child outcome summary system. This is a system that you can find at Infinite Campus. It's a 1 through 7 scale, and it's a holistic process. It uses all of the child's team, the teacher, the paraprofessional, related service providers, anyone who has a vested interest in that child's education, including the families, to look through that and get together and talk about the child's development. And then we look at that from entry into the program until exit. So we have some children that enter the preschool program at age 3 and don't exit till age 4. We have some that enter at 4 and exit at 5. So we would look at that across years to see the outcomes for each of our students with disabilities in preschool classrooms. All right, next slide, I think, Brenda. Where are we going?
So now we're going to Echo Cove. Glad you asked, Andrea. All right, next slide, please. So this is indicator 8. So indicator 8 focuses on parent engagement. So this is where parents help shape the course for their child's education. And so indicator 8, so this is kind of a lot, so I'll try to go a little bit slow here, but indicator 8 measures the percent of parents with a child receiving special education services who report that schools facilitated parent involvement as a means of improving services and results for their child. And again, this is on the indicator card as well if you need to reference that, if you have a hard time writing all of that information down. But really the simplest way to think about that is, did the school meaningfully involve the parents and their child's education? That's kind of the simplest way to think about it, because I know that's a lot of information to try to take in. And so why does this indicator matter? So research shows that when families are engaged and students do better academically, socially, and behaviorally. And so for students with disabilities, meaningful parent involvement can lead to, higher achievement, better attendance, increased graduation rates. And so this indicator really helps to ensure that schools are building two-way partnerships with parents. And, the data comes from the Kentucky's annual parent engagement survey, which is open from January to June. And so OSEEL sends out the survey information to directors of special education and preschool coordinators in January. And then the district or schools facilitate getting the surveys out to parents. And so it's available online or paper version, and it's offered in multiple languages. And it's provided to parents of students with IEPs ages 3 to 21. And so the key question that, we report for federal reporting purposes is, did the school involve parents in a meaningful way to improve services and results for their child? And so some potential data impacts for this indicator that could occur is sometimes there can be low response rates for this. And so that's something just to keep in mind. And so one way one thing that may help with that is, communicating with parents, the importance of the survey. How does that data and information use to continuously improve supports for parents and families? And so, by bolstering, response rates, that can help provide a more accurate picture of how parents perceive being involved in their child's education. So it's going to give you a better picture of your entire district if response rates are higher. So that's something to just kind of keep in mind, in particular with indicator 8 is, response rates, can be a little bit tough, to get parents to return surveys and things like that, or have them to complete it. But hopefully if they understand, the importance and the value of that, and, how you all would use that data to help, better provide support to them essentially, then that may help to encourage them to participate, more often. And it's also going to give you all a better perspective of your data as a district, as far as providing those supports to parents and families and ensuring that they're involved and engaged with their children as part of the IEP process. Next slide, please.
Okay, so now we're going to Balance Bay. Next slide. So in Balance Bay, we're looking at a couple of compliance, or actually 3 compliance indicators. Indicator 4, suspension and expulsion, and indicators 9 and 10, which is disproportionate representation. And we look at these by race. So indicator 4 has 2 parts. It has 4A and 4B. Both of them look at students with disabilities who have been removed from their setting due to disciplinary reasons out of school more than 10 days. So it has to be disciplinary reasons, it has to be out of school, it has to be more than 10 days. And so in indicator 4A, we look at our students with disabilities being removed more than all students in the district. And then actually, no, we look at it, is the district removing students with disabilities more than the rest of the state? So we compare the district rate to the state rate, just for students with disabilities. And then for indicator 4B, we look at the same thing, but we look at it by race. So we look at every race. There are 7 races: white, black, Asian, Hispanic, 2 or more, and Pacific Islander, and I don't know what I forgot. But anyway, so we look at, for each of those races, is the district removing students of a given race more than the state rate of removals for students with disabilities? So that's how we look at indicator 4. One common error we find when districts are monitored for indicator 4, if they're over a threshold of 3, if their rate divided by the state rate is more than 3, is then the files have to be reviewed. And one of the things we find a lot of is informal removals are not being documented appropriately. And so informal removals are school personnel maybe excludes a child with a disability without formal disciplinary procedures. That means they might not have put it in the student information system. So for example, you might send a kid to the principal's office because they were misbehaving. So they're removing them from their regular setting. But because they go to the principal's office, maybe they didn't think they should have reported it, but that is something that does need to be reported. It can also be shortened school days imposed by school staff. So, the principal calls the mom or the grandma and says, hey, come get your kid. He's having a really bad day. It might be a good idea for him to just kind of take off the rest of the school day. That is sending a student, due to their behavior, out of their regular setting. So that needs to be recorded as well. And then it's just important that those are reviewed, that those situations are documented and reviewed to ensure that the student is not being denied FAPE, free appropriate public education. And especially if it's done outside of the ARC. So you need to make sure if you're changing students from their regular placement that the ARC is making that determination and that you're doing everything appropriately according to the IDEA. Indicators 9 and 10 also look at race. Indicator 9 looks at how students are being identified for special education services. And then we look at that by race. So are students of one race being identified for special education services more than all other races? So in this situation, we compare one race to all students not in that race. So white to non-white, black to non-black. And we do that for every race. And if the number of students in that race are being identified at a rate of 2.25 times or more all other students, then you'll be pulled for a review. For indicator 10, it's very similar, except we look at specific disability categories. We look at, we combine MMD and FMD into the national category, which is ID, intellectual disabilities. So our students in one race being identified with an intellectual disability 2.25 times or more all other students in all other races. And then we also look at other disability categories. We look at speech, developmental delay, EBD. We look at several different disability categories. So again, these are by race. Both of these, you might get notifications that you're over the threshold. But if you're over the threshold, you're going to be asked to submit files, and then those files will be reviewed to determine whether or not you are actually out of compliance. So just being over that threshold does not indicate non-compliance. It just means you're going to have to go through that extra step of the file review and the review of practices, policies, and procedures. Okay, next slide. Okay, so as we're looking through our bay of indicators, Which one would you like to improve more this year? Or which one would you like to work on this year in your district? So Brentley just popped up a poll. You've got indicators 4, 9, and 10. And you can choose more than one. Indicator 4 is popular, but the others are gaining ground.
I would say too, Amy, if you're brand new and you haven't even had an opportunity to dive into what do these mean and where is my district, then make a note in your calendar right now to set aside some time to look at how your district performs in these indicators and look to see what you're doing well and what areas you as a new administrator could work on.
We have a dashboard for that. I'll put a link to the dashboards in the chat.
And the dashboard's also on the handout as well, too.
Oh, it
they
is?
can
Okay.
access it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the indicator dashboard is the one you would want to look for this particular question. Okay, indicator 4 is it, but they're all important. So take a look at them.
All right, now we're moving into Pathfinder Pass. And these indicators all focus on high school students and then life after high school. So you'll see indicator 1 looks at graduation rate. Indicator 2 looks at dropout rate. Indicator 13 looks at that post-secondary transition. And then indicator 14 looks at post-school outcomes. So I'll kind of go through what each of these measure and why they matter. So if we look at indicator 1, like I said, it's the percentage of youth that have IEPs, and then that's defined as students ages 14 through 21 who exit special education due to graduating with a regular high school diploma. So we all know graduation is a key predictor of post-secondary success, looking at things like employment, higher education, independent living. It also reflects your district's instructional practices and transition planning and how well the IEP is being implemented. And it also signals that students with disabilities are being included and supported in general education settings. Indicator 1 data comes from the SPED exit detail report. And you might want, I think that's one of the questions on your notes, just if you want to jot that down. Same with indicator 2, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, but indicators 1 and 2, both the data comes from that SPED exit detail report. So indicator 2 is kind of the inverse of indicator 1. It's looking at the percentage of youth with IEPs, again, ages 14 through 21, who exited special education due to dropping out of school. And again, very similar to indicator 1, this matters because we know students who are dropping out, that's associated with limited employment opportunities. It indicates maybe there's some gaps in engagement and support services in your district. And then just also looking at the school climate for students with disabilities. And then indicator 13 looks at post-secondary transition. And I'm going to spend a little bit longer talking about this one just because this is one that we've noticed a lot of districts need a little bit more support in recently, and just making sure that you include all of the components needed in the IEP, because there's a lot for those students when we look at post-secondary transition and what it measures. So 13 looks at the percent of youth that are 16 and older, that have measurable annually updated IEP goals and appropriate transition assessment services and courses. So to be considered compliant for indicator 13, there's several things that have to happen. The district needs to ensure that the student's IEP has measurable post-secondary goals based on those transition assessments. You need to ensure that the student was invited to the meeting when those transition services are discussed. We need to make sure that transition services and the course of study support the student's post-secondary goal. There needs to be documentation that any outside agencies that are likely to provide transition services have been invited to the meeting with parental consent. And the data for indicator 13, it comes from self-reported data for districts. Some of it you have been around maybe a year or two are familiar with this process. Some of you who just maybe started this summer, maybe this had already started occurring. But districts self-report for indicator 13. And then the Office of Special Education and Early Learning, we complete desk reviews for 10% of districts that self-reported 100% compliance. So we look at all of those self-reports that districts turn in, and 10% of those that said they were compliant at 100%, those we pull and look at a sample of student records. Just some common errors that we see when we're reviewing those student records. One of them is age of majority. So we know that age of majority transfers the student's rights at 18. So ARC chairs need to ensure that that age of majority is completed at least 1 year prior to that student's 18th birthday. And so that's important, just to remind your ARC chairs, maybe they need to keep a calendar or some kind of list just to ensure that that's being, done at the previous year's ARC meeting to them turning 18. Indicator 13 is important to student outcomes because it promotes student-centered planning. It also improves post-secondary success, like things like graduation, their opportunities to enroll in post-secondary education or training or gain employment, as well as live independently and participate in their communities. And then lastly, what goes along with this is indicator 14, which is post-school outcomes. And there's 3 different things that are measured within indicator 14. We have what's called like a sub-indicator 14A, and that's looking at students who 1 year prior to or post-graduation, they enrolled in some kind of higher education once they left high school. 14B looks at students who enrolled in higher education or are competitively employed within 1 year of leaving high school. And then C is kind of combines those two, the higher education, competitively employed, or they're in some other employment within 1 year of leaving high school. This data is collected through the Youth 1 Year Out, yo-yo is what you'll hear it called, survey. So districts reach out to students 1 year, again, post-graduation, and it's like a survey. It's facilitated similarly to indicator 8. We have the support of HDI that helps us collect that information from students. Let's see. A common barrier issue that we see with indicator 14 is really important to have someone that's familiar with the student that's conducting that survey. I don't know about you all, but I don't answer the phone for numbers I don't know. So thinking about students, especially young students, and how they engage with their phones now, what text, social media, things like that. So it's just really important to understand how those students are communicating and who they're going to be willing to communicate with. So it's just really important that when you're doing that or setting that up, that you want to have someone that's familiar with that student that's reaching out to them, and using multiple means to do that. So indicator 14 is important because it reflects that real world readiness. It shows whether or not students are engaged in meaningful post-secondary activities and whether we've prepared them for adult life. And then it also looks at college and career readiness and the impact of transition services. So I believe right now, Alicia, we had a little break built in. So how long would you like us to take before we come back together?
I think that we could take about 6 minutes. So we're going to take about a 6-minute break. I do encourage you to get up, walk around, stretch, kind of reset our brains, because we're going to come back into some work together. So just take about 6 minutes and we'll see you in a few. Okay, I hope that everybody was able to get up and move around. And see, Amanda, are we starting with you coming back in?
It's Lauren, I think, is going to
Lauren, sorry.
Lead us into an activity.
Yes, so we just reviewed the information about indicators 1, 2, 13, and 14. So those high school and post-high school students. So we're going to do a quick activity. We're going to hike together up the indicator trail, and each checkpoint on the mountain represents an SPP APR indicator that tells us how students are progressing towards graduation and beyond. So indicator 1 looks at base camp. This would be how can we help students reach that milestone of graduation? Indicator 2, dropout. How do we avoid that dropout? What keeps students from leaving the trail early? Indicator 13, those transition IEPs, looking at the trail map, are students' plans setting them up for the climb? And then indicator 14, those post-school outcomes, the summit of the mountain, how are students doing after the hike? So in work, training, or education. So if you don't mind, we're just going to have you drop either one word or phrase in the chat that captures a strategy or a challenge for any one of these checkpoints. So you can choose one of those 4 indicators and just let us know in the chat a word or phrase that captures a strategy or challenge.
Okay, and it looks like we have someone that's listing limited resources in rural areas. Perfect. Yeah, please continue to add in one word or a phrase. Indicator 14, start the conversation/plan sooner than later. Wonderful. Any other words or phrases? Individual student needs. Indicator 13, student interest.
Thank you all for sharing, and I'll just put in a shameless plug for OSEEL for some of those who are, struggling with those limited resources or those transition opportunities. Please do reach out to our transition education unit in OSEEL that's run by Jason Wheatley and Allison Johnson. They have a lot of resources and can probably help you out as well.
Okay, so now we're going to go to timely trails. Slide, please. Okay, so timely trails, we're going to talk a little more about a couple more compliance indicators, which are indicators 11 and 12. So indicator 11 is it's known as child find, or it's known as a 60-day timeline. So districts have 60 school days from the date that they got consent to evaluate to to eligibility determination. So determining eligibility for the student. They have 60 school days for that. And so sometimes that goes across the summer. Those summer, time weeks don't count. So it's 60 school days from start to finish. And this is really important just to make sure that the student is getting timely services, making sure you evaluate quickly and then, get the student in so that they can provide or that they can receive services. One thing to remember is if a child is moving in from out of state, has an out of state IEP, then when you are required to provide services as comparable as you can to what's in the IEP, but then determine eligibility in Kentucky. So you're going to do an initial evaluation to determine whether or not the student is eligible in Kentucky and what services you can provide as a district from that point. And then I believe Andrea is talking about indicator 12.
That's right. Thanks, Amy. And just one note for indicator 11 for child find or the 60-day timeline. Preschool programs don't always go 5 days a week. Sometimes we get Fridays without students, but that's still considered an instructional day. So preschool programs follow that 60 school day timeline. There's no differentiation. There's no separate preschool calendar. It's the same for everyone that falls under IDEA 3 through 21, just to put that plug in there for indicator 11. Indicator 12 is early childhood transition. This is the transition from Part C programs, which in Kentucky is now called the Kentucky Early Intervention System. It used to be First Steps, but we're trying to call it KEYS now. So the KEYS program is Part C. Those transition students to Part B, which is preschool programs. This indicator looks at how successful those transitions were based on having an IEP in place and ready to go by the 3rd birthday. It is super duper important that you start keeping SSID numbers yesterday for your transition kids. We need these ID numbers to look at these kids when we come to a monitor at the end of the year to make sure that you have them. This can be a spreadsheet, a notebook, depending on how big your district is, and whatever process you want to use is perfectly fine. But you need to keep track of those numbers. Once you put that child into Infinite Campus and it creates an SSID number for them to start the evaluation or the ARC process for that transition, put that number somewhere, write it down. Their birthdays, put it down. That way you try not to miss any of these kids that come through the transition process. We look at students from July 1st to June 30th every year. That can be a little bit different than a school year, so it's a full calendar year there. It's also the child's birthday that we track, not the transition date. So if that student transitions over in May, but their birthday is not till July, they won't count until the next year. That can be a little confusing. But this is how we track our successful transitions. Kentucky has a great rate for this. Typically, we're 99.9. I mean, you're always going to typically miss one kiddo. But it's really important to work with your Part C partners. So in each of your areas, there is what's called a point of entry for the KEYS program. And you should have a coordinator there that will help provide information. They will be the ones calling and scheduling these transition meetings that you will be asked and are required to attend as much as possible. Sometimes that can be a little tricky, but looking at that process, it's really important to have that communication system. One resource that we provide to you is the Part C list. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you don't know what the Part C list is, we'll get you that information. You can either shoot me an email or drop in the chat or however we're collecting information for questions. The Part C list is provided for directors of special education and preschool coordinators quarterly. We get a list from KEYS, has all the kids that are transitioning, and we place it into a secure folder on our SharePoint site. That way we can keep track of those kids. It's not the end all be all. It's not the only thing we have, but it's just another resource for you all to have. It's a great resource, but is only available to doses and coordinators. I can't give it to a person who does your transitions. I can't give it to an assistant dose. It has to be one dose, one preschool coordinator. That's just how we get around OET's Office of Education and Technology's rules sometimes about security. So, but yeah, let me know if you have that and any other questions about indicator 12. That's what indicator 12 looks at. I'm not sure who's next. Are we going somewhere else next? Oh, notable stops. All right.
So you heard us at the beginning that there are 18 indicators. So you may have noticed 3 were missing from that map. So they're notable stops along the journey, but maybe not as relevant to your everyday work. So indicators 15 and 16 are reported at the state level only. So when we turn in our APR to the Office of Special Education Programs, it's reported by the state, not by individual district. However, your individual district data does factor into that overall reporting. And then Brenda's going to talk a little bit about indicator 18, general supervision.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. So indicator 18, like 15 and 16, is reported at the state level. And it is about how well the state has set up a general supervision system. And, remember that the SPP and the APR are measuring how well IDEA is being implemented in your state. So indicator 18 is measuring the effectiveness of the state system to identify and correct non-compliance with IDEA. So it is, like I said, it is gathered, it is reported at the state level. So if your district, was found to not be compliant with an indicator like, indicator 11, you're not meeting your timelines, the APR won't report your district's name. It will just say, so many instances of non-compliance were found in the state, and within 1 year, this percentage of them were corrected. So it's a measurement of the state system. And I just want to mention as well, thinking about the SPP and APR, as a leader in your district, you should be familiar with each indicator there and how the data that you're reporting is being used to see how well you at the district level are implementing IDEA. And you can use that data to celebrate your successes, and you can also use it to identify areas for improvement. Now, just because I'm saying you're the leader, you should know the APR, that doesn't mean you have to know all the answers. In fact, being a leader means you know where to go to find the answers, you know what resources are available to you, and you know how to use your staff to problem solve. An important thing too is that you also have OSEEL staff there to help you. So reach out to them. They can help you interpret the state's APR and your district's data so that you're better poised to make decisions for your district's program and see where your needs are, but also where you're doing really well. And so, yeah, they're there. Reach out to OSEEL. They're there to help you implement all of these indicators and make decisions that will help push the kids in your district towards successful outcomes. And with that, we're gonna go on the next slide. I'm passing it back to Amanda.
All right. So we have given you a lot of information today. We know there's 18 indicators. That's why we tried to map it into a journey for you to make it a little bit more digestible as we went throughout the journey. So now that you've explored each SPP APR indicator, what they measure, why they matter, and how they're tracked, we're shifting into breakout rooms, and we're going to do an interactive review with these indicators. Remember, I had kind of mentioned you might want to fill in the blanks on your handout throughout. That's where this is going to really come in handy, is with this activity. So what's going to happen is you're going to be assigned to a breakout room. And the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to choose a group spokesperson. So the way you're going to choose that spokesperson is simply just the person who most recently went on vacation. That's who's going to serve. And they're going to just share your group's reflections when we return back from the breakout rooms. We may not have time for all of them, but we'll at least like to have a couple of groups maybe share their perspective from the activity. And so next, you're going to access the game. You're going to open the Map to Student Success game using the QR code or the link in the chat. So we'll put the link to that in the chat in just a moment. And so you're going to play as a team and work together to answer the questions on the map. And so questions are marked with a plus sign. So you can see that on the slide there. You'll just click the plus sign. It'll pull up a question that we've talked about today about the SPP APR. And only one person needs to answer it for your group. So you don't each individually have to submit an answer for it. If you just have one person from your group submit it, but you all are all welcome to pull up the map and go through the questions. I know, at least for me, I'm very visual, so I would like to see, each of the questions myself. So you're welcome to all pull them up, and only one person for your group needs to submit them. And you're welcome to use, as you go through these questions, please use your resources. You're welcome to use the reference card that's on your handout. You've got a link to that. You can use the QR code. Also, if you see on the map at the top, in that top left-hand corner, there's an eyeball there. If you click that eyeball when you get to the map, that'll actually take you to the SPP APR indicator guide as well. So you can use that as a reference. So I encourage you to use your resources throughout as you're answering these questions. And so you'll just take the time to go through, there's 7 questions. And then once you've had an opportunity to answer those 7 questions, we're going to bring you all back from breakout rooms. And so we're just going to have as many group spokespersons as we can share just briefly about which indicators your group felt most confident about and which indicators you'd like more support or clarification on. And really, this feedback is very important for us because it helps us to just think about which indicators do we might want to revisit in further OSEEL guides, like in upcoming sessions. We'll just want to make sure that we're supporting your needs and giving you additional information on what you all may need some additional clarification on. So that's what your group spokesperson is going to share as you all return from breakout rooms. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brinley, who's going to help to get us into breakout rooms. And then we're going to have the link to the game that you all can access. Or again, you can use the QR code on the screen to look at it on your phone, whichever one works best for you. All right, so thank you all for taking the opportunity to try out some of those questions. I know we were a little bit shorter on time, and so hopefully you all had an opportunity to at least get through some of them. On the questions, how many of your teams got at least 5 out of 7 correct on the quiz or the game? Just give it a thumbs up if you've got at least 5 out of 7. Good. So we're seeing several thumbs up. Great. That's awesome. Well, we appreciate you all taking the time to do that. So really quick, do we have a couple of spokespersons that would just mind to share as far as, how do they feel with the indicators? Which indicators do you feel pretty confident with, and which ones do you feel like you want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into that you might need to get a little more clarification on? Do we have a couple of spokespersons that are willing to share with us just really quickly? And you're welcome to open up your mic and share. How about someone
I'll
from?
talk.
Oh, thank you, I
Yeah,
appreciate
no
that.
problem, no problem. Our group, no, we did fairly well on the quiz, and we really enjoyed everything that we learned today. It went really fast, so we're trying to process all of the information, but we didn't really have anything specific that we would like more guidance on, but something that just came across my mind. So let's say, for example, the SPED exit detail report, for example. So those are coming up, they're fixing to be pulled. We're all looking at those. If we run them and you get errors, maybe is there an opportunity to go through some of those indicators and say, hey, if this is an issue, this is how you fix it. Is there an opportunity for those? And then anything preschool, early childhood that you want to throw my way, you can, because I've been high school my entire career, just about. Transition, I got it. All of the things. If they're taller than me, I'm good. If they're shorter than me, I'm lost.
Well, welcome to the club. Welcome
I know,
to the
right,
preschool
right.
club.
So like anything like that would be yes, the reporting manual. Those are excellent things. Thank you, Amy, for sharing that in the chat. But maybe somebody walk you through that. That would be a-okay with me. Okay, I'll hush now.
So can I speak to that real quick?
Sure, go ahead, Amy.
I know we don't have much time, but email me with those questions. But I am working on a sort of a webinar kind of thing for exiting specifically.
Well, thank you for sharing. We appreciate that feedback. That's really helpful
Absolutely.
to know. Yeah, so thank you very much for sharing. We really appreciate that. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, just because we're getting a little bit short on time. So real quick, this is just a couple of reminders as far as some of the resources that are available to you. We have News You Can Use that comes out weekly that has all the information you need in it as far as new resources, different things that would be helpful for you to know. If you're not getting those, please let us know. They are sent by Dr. Greta Hilton or Dr. Tracy Sharp. So if you're not getting those, if you search their names and they don't pull up, then just let us know and we'll be happy, and we'll have our contact information at the end. You're feel free, to contact one of us and we'll be sure that you have access to that. And then also we have the OSEEL newsletter as well that comes out quarterly. And there's also a teacher section of that newsletter. And so if you have teachers that may be interested in getting the OSEEL newsletter, they are able to get that. And we can send you out information that talks about how do they sign up for the OSEEL newsletter and things like that. So feel free, if you have teachers that might be interested, they can get signed up for that OSEEL newsletter. And then you should, I believe, automatically have access to that as a director of special ed. But if for some reason, if you don't get those in the coming, I think the next one is maybe October, if I'm not mistaken. It'll probably be about around that time frame. But if you don't get those, let us know, of course, and we can make sure that you're on there. But you should get them as directors of special education and preschool coordinators. And then also we have our DOS and preschool coordinator meetings that we have monthly. We have an OSEEL liaison that goes out to each of those meetings to provide just quick updates and things like that. So that's just a reminder about those meetings. Next slide, please. And then also just a reminder, some of the resources that we've shared with you today. You have the SPP APR indicator guide. That's going to give you a really in-depth look at all the different indicators. And then we also talked about the dashboard as well. One that we really didn't get into today, but it's maybe come in handy, is there's also yearly calendars that are provided at the beginning of the school year. I think they were sent out in July this year over News You Can Use. You can also access them in the DOS One Stop and the Preschool Coordinator One Stop as well. They're archived in the the News You Can Use tab on the left-hand side. So that helps provide, different due dates and things like that that are relevant for the school year. And if you have questions, again, if you're not able to locate those, please let us know. We'll be happy to assist with that. Next slide, please. And then, of course, just a reminder about our special education regional technical assistance centers, the CERTACs, as well as the early childhood regional training centers. They're welcome to also assist you as well. And those are maps that just kind of shows you which CERTAC or regional training center that you would be in based on your district. And there's a QR code that takes you to that website. And there's also a list of other technical assistance providers that OSEEL also funds that can help to provide support as well. Next slide, please. So just to cap off our journey, as we're kind of wrapping up today, we're going to pull up a Post-it feature here. This is kind of your exit slip for the day. And so what you're going to do is the whiteboard's going to populate. You're going to have the opportunity just to click a Post-it note, and you're just going to answer the reflection question there on the screen. So take just a moment for that. I think that one's the map. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So the question that you're going to answer is, as you travel along the path of student success, how can the SPP APR indicators serve not just as checkpoints for compliance, but as guideposts that help elevate, I can't see it there, that help elevate the experiences and outcomes of students with disabilities. So take just a moment there, you can click the Post-it feature. It's next to the emojis icon, and then you can start to add text. And so this is kind of your exit slip for the day. If you could just kind of reflect just really quickly on that question, that would be great. And we appreciate you all joining us today. Thank you so much for taking the time. We know that we provided a lot of information. The SPP APR is large. It's 18 indicators. So we tried to break it up in a little bit more manageable pieces, but we really do appreciate your time today. And then I'll turn it over to Brenda just really quickly as well to share some additional information.
Yeah, just as you're filling out your Post-its and your closing thoughts, just a reminder that the goals we have for students with disabilities are the exact same goals as we have for non-disabled students. We want them to leave school prepared to live independently, be ready for post-secondary education or job training, and be ready to be competitively employed. And so as you get into the SPP and the APR, use those as your guides to help your students get to those goals, and use them as your measurements and your guideposts.
I think we're seeing lots of great responses here. And so as you're finishing, because we are right at time, I'll just kind of let you know next steps. Our next meeting will be Thursday, October 16th. That is the third Thursday of October. It's going to feel weird because October's a month with 5 Thursdays, but our next meeting will be at the same time on October 16th. You should already have a calendar link for that. And I will also follow up next week with an email with some links to some of the resources that have been shared. Also a questionnaire just to get some feedback on our format and to give you an idea of what our next content will be and what questions you might want to make sure we try to address at our next meeting. And then also this meeting has been recorded, and we will share how you can access the videos, the slides, the notes, all of those things once we get our recording finished and shared out. So thank you all for participating. I know it feels like one more thing, but your professional learning is going to serve you well, and taking the time to hear from our OSEEL staff, our TASE staff, will ultimately make your job easier in the long run. And so thank you very much. We're so glad you're here. Y'all have a wonderful Thursday evening and a great weekend.